University from Paraná, Brazil.
So I'd like to thank the invitation of the organizers of the event, mainly Professor Ana Maria Alfonso de Faro, Professor Marcelina Mendes Ferraz, and my paper entitled Evolutionist Conception of the Series La Lucha por la Vida from the Anarchist magazine Estudios, 1936. This work intends to analyze some imagistic strategies used to build a conception of science and technology in the Anarchist magazine Estudios, published in Valencia, Spain, between 1928 and 1937. We will give greater emphasis to the analysis of the La Lucha por la Vida series, published between February and September of 1936, in the context of the Spanish Civil War, in which the evolutionary theory is synthesized in short texts illustrated by Joseph Renaud. We will try to discuss how the relationship between text and image constitutes different layers of meaning about evolutionism in its imbrication with human development via science, technique, philosophy, and art. Estudios magazine was the most successful anarchist editorial experience in the period, reaching 70,000 copies in circulation monthly, encompassing topics as distinct as controversial, such as naturist medicine, sex education, new Malthusianism, scientific and technological dissemination, eugenics, pacifism, anti-clericalism, feminism, among others. For Javier Navarro, in his book El Paraíso de la Razón, this editorial line would be in accordance with an anti-dogmatic eclecticism, with the libertarian tradition of autodidacticism, with the intention of disseminating and establishing an emancipatory culture that would lead to a possibility of society alternative to capitalism. In this regard, the magazine, according to Xavier Diaz, brought new meaning to the anarchist tradition of reverence to science and technical progress, understood as having a liberating role for the individual and society, especially in the field of biology. This option was probably due to the wide participation of naturist doctors in its editorial board, and to the option of combating the conservative, hegemonic, anti-evolutionist discourse of religious nature. Throughout its existence, Estudios magazine realized a peculiar appropriation of evolutionism, marked by a defense of new Malthusianism and eugenics from a social perspective, with the aim of creating a rational, healthy, just, and happy society. In this way, it sought to encourage conscious motherhood and birth control by disseminating a series of contraceptive methods, such as vaginal, publishing manuals for the purpose of sex education, and even using the magazine's office structure for sale or distribution of contraceptives, such as the Ascon Eugenic Cone and the Fremita Pessary. This periodical was also part of the effort of the libertarian movement to create new forms of production and management of technical scientific knowledge, characterized by a process of collective appropriation and redefinition of roles between experts and non-experts, already in place in libertarian associative networks such as labor unions, syndicates, and rational schools, and their practices such as meetings, conferences, and rational education. In the analyzed period, the graphic design of the magazine was coordinated by the graphic artists Manuel Monion and Joseph Renaud. who, in addition to graphic design and covers, also produced a set of photomontage series such as The Ten Commandments, Black Pages of War, Four Seasons, Human Love, and Lucha por la Vida. This series, Lucha por la Vida, was published between February and September 1936, in the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. In this period, Estudios magazine defended critical and strategic engagement alongside the Republican and then revolutionary forces, and the condemnation of the war, based on a pacifism characteristic of individualist anarchism. It also defended, at least since 1933, the constitution of an anti-fascist or working class front that would bring together anarchists and communists and their respective trade union centers in order to prevent the fall in the shameful regime of fascist nature. Renault's participation in the magazine is partially explained in this context. The Valencian artist José Renault, a sympathizer of libertarian ideals, gradually approached the Spanish Communist Party. His joining the PCE is due to his enthusiasm for the potential of social transformation anticipated by the proclamation of the Spanish Republic in 1931, and with his growing understanding of art as a revolutionary instrument shared with communist theorists such as Plekhanov in his work Art and Social Life. This political cultural militance is evidenced by assuming in the government of the Popular Front led by Largo Caballero the general direction of the fine arts, linked to the Ministry of Education and Fine Arts. José Renault's political engagement is translated in his aesthetic proposals and is expressed simultaneously with the transformations of his artistic production. His transition from an article perspective to the intensification of experiments inspired by the constructivist art, the Soviet graphic design, the photomontages of surrealist nature by Max Ernst, and the posters of political and post-datist nature by German John Hartfield, takes place in this period. He also carries out pioneering technical experiments in Spanish graphic design with the use of airbrush in his illustrations. In his book, The Social Function of Art of 1937, Renault proposed a new realism based on the inheritance of the Spanish realist painting of the 17th century, and in the language of the posters. The political poster should be, I quote, the powerful lever of the new realism in its mission to transform the conditions in the historical and social order for the creation of a new stand and incite the development of these new men. End of quote. We can say that Estudios magazine, despite sharing the vision of science as a revolutionary instrument, distrusts of official science and its use by economic and political power, defending a humanist perspective. This feature in the optimism science was compensated by its fascination for the technique, as perceived in the growth of the sections destined to this subject. This paradoxical fascination, which also did not dispense the combative spirit in relation to technique used for destruction, coupled with the editorial line of the magazine, with a strong materialist tendency and of critique towards the Spanish reactionary institutions, especially the Catholic Church. It is in this sense that we can understand the vision imaginatively expressed by Renault on the evolutionary process, in which biology loses spatial technique and aesthetics as decisive factors. This series is composed of 7 chapters. The first image of the series, The Struggle for Life 1, the scenario, in portraying the scenario of the struggle for life, in addition to strategies for survival such as food, protection of the body with clothing, fire, great importance is given to knowledge, to work, to modes of expression and communication, to drawing, to living with other beings. A scenario of hostility, diversity, and abundance is created, which is faced with the struggle waged by work, by thought, by learning, by feeling. Renault presents us his vision of the process of human evolution as strongly conditioned by the relations between man and environment, from which the human being, in order to satisfy his needs, sought to extract through violent struggle the elements for his subsistence. This struggle would be marked by the differential of development of conscience for humanity, fundamental for the triumph over the obstacles in his trajectory. Through Renaud, in his reflections, emphasizes Marxist themes of consciousness in its relation to work. He does not present this relation in a decisively dialectical way. In The Struggle for Life 2, the first element, Renaud highlights the role of a technique, fire control, as essential for the biological evolution of the human being. The disproportion of the great pink, yellow, and orange flames towards the universe reminds us of the effects used by surrealism in dialogue with the language of advertising illustration and the Art Deco posters. It's possible to think of the moment of the birth of a new era, a new day. For him, as for Engels, Morgan, and Gordon Child, a human being through the invention, discovery of fire can cope with abrupt climatic change, unlike other animals that have become extinct. In The Struggle for Life 3, the graphic expression, Renaud reminds us of a classic Marxist theme of interaction between social relations of production and the emergence of language, emphasizing the importance of communication simultaneously to the effort of domination and transformation of nature. His option for graphic expression as a way of presenting this characteristic draws our attention for its potential relationship between technique and art. The composition allows us to establish links between the universe of human actions and the universe of representation. Both the image and the text seem to build the idea that the weapons for survival were not only hunting and defending artifacts, but also painting, drawing, graphics, and writing. There is an emphasis not only on the tools improved with the evolution of the human species, but also on the recording techniques and narratives of the deeds of human species. Communication would be a feat as important as, or more important than, the mastery over animals, for it preserves the memory and establishes dominion over time. The text stresses as an index of human superiority the spiritual need to perpetuate its actions and thoughts through external lasting means, the graphic expression. The cave paintings and sculptures are seen as documents and testimonies of the spirit and customs of the ancestors, monuments as ladders to the future. We must remember that Renaud, in his apology to the graphic expression, recovers the socialist and mainly anarchist tradition always reiterated in Estudios magazine of the conception of culture in its various expressions as a civilizational mark and of education for emancipation. In The Struggle for Life 4, The Transformation of Matter, the author presents the notion that technical knowledge, present in machines, is the result of accumulated human experience. This montage provokes a temporal fusion, simultaneously uniting and opposing a prehistoric past and a modern and futuristic present. A fascination for the machine as a symbol of modernity is revealed. The text states, I quote, "The history of the machine is the history of man, the modern expression of the triumph of man over nature." End of quote. Renaud strongly expresses the conception that the machine would be the result of an evolutionary process of development of techniques initiated with the use of stones for purpose of combat, hunting, or food preparation. The ability of transformation of matter led to such a perfection of manufacture that it enabled the use of these stone artifacts even as currency, opening space for new social structures. Renaud seems to argue that more important than technique used is its appropriation by society in new configurations of productive forces or of social and economic organization. In The Struggle for Life 5, The Conquest of Time, there is an overlapping of art images. Stylized figures in black, silhouettes of hunters carrying bows and arrows, the Venus of Willendorf, and an image that refers to a Greek sculpture of a female nude, a classical one. Art is shown as a conquest of time, a record of human discoveries and adventures. The artistic works are seen as emblems of the victories over the environment and as a testimony to the historical development. History of art is considered, I quote, "the most vivid expression of the historical past, mysterious and an inexhaustible source, in which civilized men have drunk their own consciousness of the past. In the image, the struggle for life seeks the tragic contradiction. The use of colors and the overlap of elements resembles the language of dreams or unconsciousness so dear to surrealism. The text elects the war as the great contradiction. Renaud perpetrates an attack on fascism and its defense that violence and war are inseparable parts of the human spirit. He argues, within the Marxist tradition, especially the work of Engels, that the wars and the conflicts in the past were due to the self-defense of societies divided into families, clans, and tribes, but that in the present they originated from the class struggle, from the inequality of distribution of wealth and property, becoming a plague, an obstacle to the progress of science, technique, and art. In the Struggle for Life 7, The Conquest of the Sea, the rounded features of the woman and her disproportion in relation to the boat she holds with her fingertips make one think of a mermaid, a metaphor for attraction, seduction by the sea, or a metaphor for the force of nature. In the text, some moments of the evolution of this technique, the ship, are punctuated, such as the primitive rafts made of trunks and branches, the advance and the use of the sail, taking advantage of the wind as a force to replace human effort of traction by rowing, even the great contribution of the Phoenicians for future Odysseys. Renaud, like Childs, presents the ship and the tools employed in its production as symbolizing a whole economic and social system. The themes addressed in series open new perspectives to the idea of evolution in the magazine, focusing more on the dimensions of technique and culture than the biological dimension, and the art and aesthetics are shown as a fundamental components in this process. Renaud seeks to strengthen the characteristic libertarian eclecticism of the magazine by dialoguing in an unorthodox way with the vision of social evolution present in Marxism. However, his interpretation distances itself from any mechanistic and gradualist view, approaching more of a Marxist interpretation like that of Gordon Childe, who, in the same year of publication of the Renaud series, published his book Man Makes Himself, which was marked by an evolutionist vision combined with a cultural history. He merged evolutionism and transcultural diffusion, defending cultural diversity, and the idea that there was not a single path of social development. This view was marked by a political position to combat nationalisms, present in the debates of racial biologization of the human evolutionary process. In this perspective, the transformations of material culture in interaction with the environment as constituted and constituent of the human being are emphasized. It is in this context that we can understand the political and ideological interests of Renaud in this trend of explaining human evolution at the intersection between biological transformation and material culture, between evolution and revolution.